Hello, this is how to run the operating system FreeDOS on Linux. We're following the tutorial by Jim Hall. So FreeDOS is an operating system. Let's go to its website and download the latest version. Says that we should press the button download FreeDOS, the blue one, version 1.4. And we will start with the version that will run in live CD mode. This one, the blue button. So I have downloaded the zip file to this directory. Let's open a terminal in here. And let's continue with the tutorial. It says that we have a zip file that we should unzip. We have already extracted the files. There's 3 files in there, a readme.txt, a file with extension img, and a file with extension ISO. We're going to use an emulator. We're going to emulate 32-bit CPU. We're going to use QEMU. I am using the Linux operating system Ubuntu 25.10. I'm on a AMD 64 x86-64 CPU, so the emulation should work really well. We're using the QEMU emulator, but we're not actually using the hardware virtualization on this computer. We're starting creating the final command line for QEMU, but we're going to start with a very short command line, and we're going to add additional command line parameters as needed. So the first command line parameter that we're interested in is -m, which specifies the amount of random access memory in megabytes. So we have created a virtual machine, 32 megabytes random access memory, no virtual disks, no CD-ROMs, no floppy disks, no nothing. QEMU starts a separate window and says that it just cannot boot. There's no DVD, CD-ROM, nothing, no bootable disk, cannot boot over the internet. Next up, we're going to increase the command line. We're going to use the command line parameter CD-ROM. And we're going to provide the ISO file. So it managed to boot from the CD-ROM drive. We're at the boot menu. Live environment mode. I pressed enter, the default option will run. Okay, so we have the D drive, which is probably the DVD-ROM. Yes, it is. It says that there is a C drive, but this I'm not exactly sure what it is. Maybe it's a I don't know, virtual memory or something. So QEMU will grab the mouse. In order to release the grab, so to be able to use the mouse outside the QEMU window, you need to press what's written in the title bar of the QEMU window, which says press Ctrl-Alt-G, keyboard combination to release the grab. So Ctrl-Alt and G. And then because we have only 32 megabytes of random access memory, this ISO file would try to create a RAM disk and to run from random access memory. but it cannot because there's not enough random access memory. This is the message that we get. Warning: limited random access memory drive space, falling back to CD-ROM file system. So it wanted to create a temporary file system, probably for C:, and not use the CD-ROM drive all of the time, because maybe CD-ROM drives are slow. Okay, and then it says that we can exit the QEMU window using the main menu in QEMU, and then machine, and then quit. Next up, it says that we can enhance the performance of the virtual machine by enabling KVM, which will make the virtual machine actually use the hardware virtualization instructions in my CPU. So I am on AMD. It's going to use AMD-V and additional CPU instructions for making the virtual machine run as fast as possible. Enable -KVM, and the rest of the command line remains the same. Yeah, and indeed the speed is a bit faster. Next up, in order to not lose all of our changes when we shut down the virtual machine, we want to create a virtual disk for the virtual machine. There's a command line, QEMU-img, that allows you to create virtual disks. So let's run this incantation. So we want to create a 500 megabyte in size file named FreeDOS.qcow2. qcow2 is the default format for QEMU and Virt Manager, and the file extension qcow2 is also pretty default, either qcow or qcow2 for the file extension. So QEMU-img create -f, which is probably the file system type, qcow2, file name FreeDOS.qcow2, and then size 500 megabyte. And it was instant. qcow2 images are the backing store for virtual disks, are pretty small, start pretty small, and then as needed, the size of the actual file on the disk, the qcow2 file, will increase up to maximum 500 megabytes. And inside qcow2 files, you can have both a hard disk image, but also snapshots of that hard disk, that virtual disk. Okay, and next up, it says that we should amend our command line that we're ever increasing by adding this parameter first. So we have a CD-ROM drive and a disk. How do we paste? And then we don't want to boot from the hard disk. We want to boot from the CD-ROM. And with this, to be extra sure, we're going to specify the boot order. I'm not sure if this is the correct command line. Parameter boot space order equals D. Let's see. So it still tries to boot from the CD-ROM, which is what we expect. Okay, says that it cannot create a RAM disk. We're still in live CD mode, and we're running straight from the CD-ROM drive. Okay, and we want to select in the boot menu the fact that we want to install to hard disk, so the third option. So press the down arrow key twice and then press enter. Install to hard disk. Let's see, it asks for the language. What is your preferred language? English, of course. Do you want to proceed? Yes. And we want the C: drive. And we should reboot now. And it still tries to boot from the CD-ROM drive. And not that intuitively, you should make sure to select again the option, the third option, install to hard disk. So after you run the first part of the installer wizard, you should reboot from the CD-ROM drive again and select the same option to continue the installer wizard. This is the option, continue with the installation. The drive C: exists, but it's not formatted. FAT16 file system type. Third time it asks for my language. Full installation, including application and games. Let's go with a full installation, including application and games. Hopefully 500 megabytes for the virtual hard disk is enough. We are now ready to install FreeDOS. Yes. And it's installing software packages grouped by directories. So base backslash things xcopy attrib disk. So these sound like actual executables that some of these I have heard of, like xcopy. Keyboard layouts, the paginator more, help viewers, networking, unzip and zip, executables that you would recognize from a Unix file system, such as grep and less and md5 sum. The speed of copying from the CD-ROM to the virtual disk is really slow. I'm going to guess that the limitations are the small amount of random access memory, which means less space for disk caches. I'm not sure if the virtual disk uses the best hardware technologies possible, like NVMe, SATA, VirtIO, and maybe also the CD-ROM is just IDE, not SATA by default. I saw at least 2 web browsers, Lynx with a Y and Dilo. So installing everything took 25 minutes on my computer, which is quite a lot for just less than 500 megabytes to copy. And now it asks if I want to reboot, but in here the suggestion from the tutorial says that we should actually exit to DOS and then make sure we do an fsync by shutting down. So let's do that. No, return to DOS and then shut down. Okay, so with that, we finished installing the operating system on C colon. There's no more need to boot from the CD-ROM drive. There's two options. Either we replace boot order from D to C, like this, or we could just not specify the boot order at all. We can just remove the final part of the command line like this. So we specify that we want QEMU, we want KVM, we want 32 megabytes of random access memory. We still have the CD-ROM ISO file, and we have the virtual disk. Okay, so this is the bootloader. Default option is the option 2, GemX. So this is it. We finished booting. It tried to connect to a DHCP server. I'm not sure it has succeeded. So again, we have an installation of FreeDOS, the latest version 1.4. And we also have two different web browsers. We have a TCP IP networking stack, a DHCP client, and if at the command line we specify that the QEMU virtual machine should have a network interface card and should have access to a DHCP server, then we probably can connect to the internet. I'm not sure if it just works out of the box without adding more parameters to the command line, but we can test. Let's see if we have which here. Which. So yeah, which executable exists. Let's look at the path environment variable. Let's see how it looks like. So path is c:\freedos\bin, and then c:\freedos\links. Okay, so sounds like there's something similar to symbolic links, hard links. Okay, let's see if we have the ping command line. We do. So the DHCP lease did not work. There's no DHCP server listening. Let's fix that. So the QEMU documentation suggests that we want to use the network backend of type user networking as LIRP, which looks like this. There's a host networking. The IPv4 addresses are in the range 10.0.2/24, the CIDR, and the syntax is -netdev space user. So let's try this. How do we do that? So -netdev space user. There's no ID parameter. Okay, so it took a number of tries. So first of all, the QEMU wiki networking suggested that just -netdev user is enough, but then it complained that the ID command line parameter is missing. If I just added the command line parameter ID equals -net0, as it said in here, it's not enough because the netdev is not paired with a hardware device. I didn't specify the hardware that's behind the network interface card. And then that requires two parts. So you need to have netdev and then what type of networking, so user, and then an ID. And then for that ID, you need to have a device and you specify the hardware that's behind the network interface cards. That can be VirtIO, Intel E1000, RTL 8139, and two more possibilities. So I tried with the one that's 100 megabit per second, RTL 8139, and that was way too novel for FreeDOS. So then somebody suggests that I go even lower to NE2000 ISA. So this network interface card RTL 8139 is actually a PCI card, whereas this one sits on the ISA bus. So before PCI Express there was PCI, and before that there was ISA. So with this incantation I managed to get the virtual machine running the DHCP client to actually connect to the DHCP server that sits inside the QEMU process and receive a DHCP lease. But then the documentation in QEMU says that most likely pinging will not work. Says in general, with user networking SLIRP, ICMP traffic should not work. Inside a guest, you cannot use ping. And if the host is actually Linux, which it is, then ping might work. But if you do additional configurations. So I didn't actually try to use ping to make sure that the networking works. And I went straight for one of the web browsers. I saw three web browsers, the two Linux versions, the one with an I and the one with a KS. And then there's also Dilo. And we're using LINX. And I'm not exactly sure if any of these web browsers support modern HTTPS cryptography and can navigate to HTTPS websites correctly. So I went to the only HTTP protocol website that I know of, which is http://httpforever.com. Let's see how I got here. So let's exit Q, Y, CD backslash. So CD backslash takes us to the root of the current drive. So that's C:\\. Clear screen should clear the screen. Let's look again at the path environment variable. It only contains directories within c:\FreeDOS, so applications that are more core parts of FreeDOS, whereas additional applications have been installed in other directories than c:\FreeDOS, and none of those executables are part of the path environment variable. If we search for links, for instance, the one with Y, it cannot find it. So let's look at the directory structure. It looks like this. So we know that FreeDOS is something similar to c:\Windows, the directory of the operating system. And then there's a bin directory with base executables there. And then I started searching for links. I have started with the first directory there, which is c:\apps. Let's see what's inside. So there's dn2, which is what? DOS Navigator, hopefully. Lame and cjg play, maybe for playing mp3 files, ad play. So audio players. No web browser in here. Next up, there's games. Probably the web browsers are not there, but there's the net directory. Let's go there. DOS is case insensitive, so you can go either cd space net all lowercase, or you can go all uppercase, or a combination of cases like this. And in here we have web browsers Dilo, links, lynx, and maybe even more. Who knows what Arachne is? Arachne was, I know, the reference HTTP client from the makers of the HTTP protocol. Okay, and there's also an SSH client, or maybe two. And the VNC viewer, wow. So let's select any of the web browsers. Let's go with, so we went with links. ly, there's auto-completion. The name of the executable is what we would expect. And then we want a URL probably. So http forever.com. Okay, we can use the keyboard to scroll through the URLs. Right arrow to navigate. So the arrow key is up and down to go through URLs inside the page, and right arrow key to navigate. So it says that it's trying to connect to GitHub, and there's not enough HTTPS cryptography. Let's see if I select Y is enough. Allow, how do we select to allow everything? I'm not sure. And look at this, we have navigation to LinkedIn. So it could navigate to an HTTPS web page, but it just didn't use modern cryptography. Maybe, I don't know, it does a best effort to do HTTPS cryptography. How do we jump to the next link, not to the second one. I don't know. Let's see if the GitHub works. I'm not sure what I'm doing here at all. Continue Y. Bad HTML. And it says in the status bar at the bottom, so right arrow key to follow a link, left arrow key to go back in history. Okay, Q to quit. Okay, so that shows very advanced features for the DOS operating system. So the last and final version of DOS was MS-DOS 6.22, which appeared in 1994 before Windows 95. All of the Windows 90-something operating systems did have MS-DOS built-in, available inside the operating system, and the operating system version, the MS-DOS operating system versions actually are larger than 6.22, but MS-DOS 6.22 was actually sold as an operating system. Okay, and networking speeds in 1994 with extremely slow dial-ups, etc., were no match for what we have right now inside QEMU with FreeDOS. So what you have just seen is complete and utter luxury for the standards of the year 1994. So extremely speed networking transfers, a plurality of web browsers to choose from, even modern web pages do render something, the modern HTTPS protocol web pages. Okay, and let's exit a bit the grab. In this, so the tutorial ends, but then there's additional tutorials also from the same person, from Jim Hall. And there's this one which seems very interesting, a text user interface package manager for FreeDOS, which is called FDIMPLES. So FreeDOS is FD, and I is installer, and M is my, and P is package, and L is list, and E is editor, and S is software. Wow. Let's see where this executable is. So let's go back to the root of the c:\drive. Let's use which to see if this application comes pre-installed. fd impulse. And it's part of the base operating system, because when you install FreeDOS, the first option there is to install just the base operating system, just 20 megabytes of files, which probably excludes most of the c:\apps directory and c:\net directory, etc. So let's take this application for a ride. fdimples, and it says that I have installed all of the applications, all of the archivers, the base, wow. We're not running the best version of FreeDOS inside the bootloader, so when you boot FreeDOS, it gives you different possibilities, and from what I remember, it was extremely important when you were running MS-DOS version that, for instance, was part of Windows 98 second edition, to always use most of the random access memory that you had available at that time. And 32 megabytes of random access memory was a lot in Windows 98 second edition time. So that's the year 1999. So whenever you booted in the MS-DOS version that's part of Windows 98 second edition, you always launched HiMem.sys or something to have everything be way snappier. So copy pasting of files, navigating, everything was extremely faster because more of the random access memory was being used for, I don't know, for speeding up everything. And right now I can see the lack of speed when I keep the up arrow key pressed. There's a bit of lag there. The computer is doing things after I remove my finger from the down arrow key. HiMems, what is that? HiMem SX. Yeah, pretty sure if you select another boot option or if you somehow do the equivalent of HiMem, you would get way better performance. Okay, let's look at the list of games. There's a solitaire game. More than one Dooms. A Snake. A Tetris. Flappy Bird Pong. Another Doom. NetHack. Another Tetris, the second Tetris. The second Pong. Flight Simulator. Space Shooter. A second Snake. So Arachne was indeed a web browser. There's curl for downloading. Network enabled package manager. Gopher client, Gopher US. htget. I know, isn't this a mirroring tool for HTTP servers? PPP, wow. There's ping in there. And one of these should be an SSH client. And with what we have, we should be able to actually connect to the SSH server on the host operating system. From what I see here, it says that the IPv4 address 10.0.2.2 is the host. And for instance, you can connect to the SSH server there. This should be the syntax. So the executable, that's the SSH client, and then the IP address ending with 2.2. I'm not sure what a VNC viewer will do. I'm not sure if there's graphics mode. So on top of MS-DOS 6.22, you could do two types of graphics. You could do CRT type of graphics where you're basically in text user interface mode, so very similar to what you see here. Plus, you could create sounds using the PC speaker. And then there was graphics mode with actual pixels, where you could, for instance, run Windows 3.11 for workgroups. wget and curl, both available. So I'm not sure if any of these applications run in graphics mode, the type with actual pixels. Okay. I'm interested in the application that's DN2, File Manager, DOS Navigator 2. Great, this is the app that is certainly very useful here. Let's see how we exit, escape, and start DOS Navigator. So that's CD apps, and then DN2, and then there should be a DN executable in here, dn.com, this guy. I'm expecting a twin pane file manager, which is actually what I see here. DOS Navigator RIT Research Labs 1991. So I first saw this application, DOS Navigator, in the year 1994, and I'm not sure it was an open source application back then. Right now it says DN/2 open source. vpascal.com. Okay, and it's very similar to DOS Navigator. That's to Norton Commander. We had both file managers, Norton Commander and DOS Navigator. We could just select which one to use, but everybody by default just used Norton Commander. We didn't even try to see the difference between DOS Navigator and Norton Commander. We just defaulted to Norton Commander. It was on the path, it was NC, and that was it. Okay, so let's see what we can do with a twin pane Orthodox file manager. We can navigate directories as you would expect. So top level, there's a fdauto.com. There's something wrong with the arrow keys. They do skip to, so from apps, instead of going to devel when I press the down arrow key, it actually goes to FreeDOS and then goes to net and util. Which means that I cannot actually see the content of some files. fdauto sounds like c:\autoexec.bat. Okay, let's see what it does. It sets the path environment variable to be what we know, c:\fdos/bin, and then appends c:\fdos/links. says the locale as we configured inside the FreeDOS installer, so English, US, time zone UTC. Keyboard layout, US 858. The REM are comments, so this is actually comment. Labels and go-tos. Yeah, often you would just edit autoexec.pt. Just to, I don't know, to change the path environment variable, to append something to the, to run something each time the computer starts. So this was the easiest way to mess up your installation. You put something wrong in here, and there were no users back then. Anybody could just edit the list of executables that would run automatically when you start the computer. Command.com sounds like the actual command line interpreter, so similar to Bash. Maybe these are part of the kernel. I'm not sure exactly how kernels work in DOS. So DOS sits on top of BIOS, which is provided as firmware on the motherboard of the computer. I'm not exactly sure what a kernel does in DOS. You could go straight to the BIOS. You didn't. You could just bypass the. I know. And the mouse works, and that's a great feature. Or not. Oh. So I can move the mouse around, but left click doesn't do anything. Right click actually opens the menu. Okay. Well, we just couldn't survive in DOS without a file manager. This type of file manager. Yeah, the fact that the down arrow keys jump to places is really, really not great. Yeah, so this issue was really bad. And I searched on Google why in FreeDOS QEMU if I press the down arrow key it goes down 2 positions instead of 1. And the Google AI mode results says that there's something wrong with the way QEMU emulates the PS2 keyboard or the way that Borland applications handle keyboards. And DOS Navigator indeed is written, seems to be written in some form of Pascal-like programming language, and says that a possible solution is what I have added at the end of the command line. So this incantation minus global space i8042.keyboard minus throttle equals on. And let's see how it works. So DOS Navigator works correctly, which means that I can actually start applications in here, such as the web browsers, links, Continue with HTTPS. I'm not sure what I did. It navigated somewhere. How do we open a URL? Go. URL to open. So I pressed the G keyboard key, this thing. And the same thing, http forever.com. Okay. And also here the down arrow key worked correctly. Let's go to the website, scottthelm.co.uk, right arrow key, HTTPS, of course, speaking, why, upcoming events, why, a, okay. Let's quit, try the other web browsers. Let's see if PageUp works. It does. Let's go with dilo.bat. Wow, and we have pixels. That's great. If we zoom, we're going to have the pixels not be that great, but it's easier to read. Okay, so it actually entered the DOS mode, the BIOS mode with actual pixels on the screen, which is, I know, called VGA, CGA, SVGA, something like that. Wow. What's not great with the mouse? Control A works. HTTP forever.com. Zero images downloaded. Click. I'm not sure how clicks work. Open a new tab. Wow, tabbed browsing. So I'm not sure how to navigate with the mouse. Let's see if we can navigate with the keyboard somehow. Slash space. I have no clue how to navigate. So with the arrow keys you go up and down, with and you go at the end of the page, with home you go at the start. And then there was caret browsing, tabbing, slash, nothing seems to work. So I don't know how to use this web browser except for copying. Let's see if copy paste works. Copy link location, Control A, Control V. How do we navigate? What is that? Okay, so I stressed out the application too much. Close. And we're back in the text user interface mode. Okay, let's see a bit the executables that exist in c:\FreeDOS links. So some of the applications, this is a game, this is from net directory, are have links here. Okay, so you can just start the application without needing to navigate to the directory where the application is installed. How do we use this thing? The W key, board key. Cool. Let's look at all of the games. If we're at this point, how do they do that? C:\games, Boliter, and player. What is that? Boliter.exe. In DOS, you needed to guess which is the actual application. You looked for the extension .exe, .com, .bat. So I cannot prove that Boliter works. Call stack, page fault, app stack. No debug symbols from what I see there. Doom boom. Boom.exe probably. Ultimate free Doom. New game. First episode. Please don't kill me. So the keyboard keys and mouse. Okay. How do we open this thing? W, space, Control, Alt, Control fires. Control, Control. Enough. Press Y to quit. Okay, that's enough. So FreeDOS, the FreeDOS experience in QEMU is a million times better than the experience that you had in the newest version of MS-DOS 6.22 in the year 1994 because of the speed of the computers, because of huge amounts of random access memory, because the networking exists and it works, and HTTP and HTTPS and SSH and everything is just way, way better right now. But it's a technology that didn't changed that much in the last 40 years, 30 years. And it's important to have the existing applications continue to work correctly. So the applications that worked correctly in MS-DOS in the year 1994, it's important to have them working for the next 100 years correctly in FreeDOS. Other than that, yes, we would all want the newest hardware to be supported. We improved disk speeds, I know, Bluetooth, etc. Better graphics. But if you have the applications, if you need the applications, maybe they're vital to your enterprise, for your company, maybe you have important archives in formats of applications that only have ever run under MS-DOS, then probably FreeDOS is your best option. And other operating systems that are similar to FreeDOS. For instance, whatever is built into the DOS emulator, DOS QEMU. So this is it. This is how to run the FreeDOS 1.4 operating system under Linux QEMU. Thank you.